Hello everybody. Nice to see you here. A good crowd, and we have really atmospheric presentations today, talking about ghosts in a whisper. So, no, actually, I have once a story. It was like my first big conference. It was back in Russia, and I lost my voice. Like I was rehearsing heavily, and I lost my voice like 2 days before the conference, and I was like really, I thought it's a disaster. But then I saw somewhere in the internet that you can drink cognac with honey, and this helps. And I was like very skeptical about that, but I was ready to try anything, and it helped. Surprise. So yeah, but today I'm gonna talk about full stack IntelliSense. And yeah, my name is Andrei. So, anybody can spot a problem with this code. By the way, is it really seen? Can you see it on the last row? Okay. Anybody? Just 2 lines of code. There's a problem. So, yeah, there is a typo. In integration, in the second row, the letters are swapped. So sometimes it's really hard to spot such things, and it can lead in really funny issues in kind of in real world if you're just using JavaScript. So if you're not using TypeScript yet, you should consider using it, because then it's very simple. And I'm trying to use TypeScript everywhere. I'm using it from 2013, I guess. It was yeah, from beginning of 2013, so just like a couple of months after it was released, I was already using it in production. And so yeah, and I'm trying to cover with IntelliSense the whole application. And it is quite easy to cover the front end, and we have GSX if you want to cover the templates. Then it is, of course, easy to cover the backend. Probably every backend is covered with IntelliSense, or almost every. And then we have connection to the database, which can be handled by ORM, and then it is covered. But what about this? There is a link between front-end and backend, and it is usually not covered by IntelliSense. What I'm talking about? So there is like, you can see here, there is a simple front end. It's Preact. In React, it will be the same code. And it uses like fetch API data, and then Express endpoint, it has also this API data. And this is like a contract that is like, which is a magic string, essentially. So there is no connection. So currently it looks like this, really. And front end is like, hello, and you know, and you never know if there is still that endpoint. And in practice, it leads to many issues that are like not easy to find out and troubleshoot. Of course, it usually in big companies it usually covered with tests, but there might be cases when tests are missing. Always, you should think about it. So what we want to do is we want to connect front end and back end, and we kind of make it part of the same body, like this, you know. So yeah, how it should be, at least in my opinion. Just a second. Okay. Oops. I think I need to make it a little bit bigger. Like this, probably. Yeah, so I have an application. This is actually my startup, and called DeskMe. We have a bunch of stuff here, and I just wanted to show one of those. We can take anyone, but this is about user profile. And it's actually written in Vue.js and Meteor.js and many other cool technologies, or maybe not cool, depending on what you think. And here in the code, you might notice that we are using like this kind of user profile controller. And then it says like user profile controller save. So it probably is like some service maybe that calls our backend. And let's try to navigate to the save method. And we navigated there, and it's actually, it turns out it's under server in here. And it actually has already all the server code, so it does some database updates and this kind of stuff. What happens? I mean, you cannot easily call server from front end, right? But somehow it's done. And you can notice that there is this decorator, which is interesting. So how it works? Let me return to presentation. So basically the decorator plays essential part in this thing, and the decorator is needed for two things. Oops, sorry, wrong arrow. Yeah, so for decorator itself does part of the stuff, and there is also a build plugin that searches for those decorators through all the files and does some stuff. And the decorator itself, what it does, it creates the endpoint actually. Well, it's Meteor.js, so it's kind of, they use methods, but essentially it's the same stuff. It just goes over the WebSocket. But it's essentially the same as REST endpoint. And then build plugin, what it does, it creates a proxy class on the client that actually calls this endpoint. Like, so the whole connection is created automatically. I know you might not really understand it for now, and that's why we're gonna make it from scratch. Okay. So let's return to this application that I showed on one of the first screenshots. So here we have small client-side stuff, and I have HTML, index HTML that uses like script type model, ESM models. How many of you guys used ESM models in the browser? Maybe in oh, nice, somebody. And in Node.js, they are now native. Oh, that's cool, that's cool. But not many. But I thought before this presentation I was not using those. I already gave this talk at some point, some time ago. But I decided I need to update. Because you just need to be like 9 levels higher, you know. Okay, just let me. No, it's just look at that. You need to be cool, you know. Okay, but yeah, so there's a very simple front end, and then there is a very simple server side as well. So yeah, I showed that's the whole server side. So what we want to do with that? We want to do something like what I showed. So we want to have a class with a decorator, things like that. Let's create it. So we want to export a class, like app controller maybe. And this class should have a static method, static async method data. So we are kind of, okay, data is the endpoint, right? And it should just return hello world. Or let's say hello HelsinkiJS. And this would be cool if that would work, right? And but of course it will not work as it is, so we need to add some kind of magic. And we want to add this magic, and I just put here like decorator API. Well, and what this decorator is, anybody knows what is a decorator? What is kind of essentially a decorator? It's just a function. So whenever you have a class with a decorator, then when JavaScript loads this class, then this decorator will be executed, more or less, if you simplify it a little bit at least. So we can create a function API and put this actual creation of the endpoint in this function, so we can kind of hide it, and then we can make it like a universal, so that it works for all the stuff. And currently it still says that API is not good enough because it accepts too few arguments. But it is easy to check what are the arguments of this. Actually, TypeScript can help us, because it has this method decorator definition, and you can see clearly that it has target, property key, and descriptor. And if you ever read ECMAScript spec, then you know what is descriptor of a property. This is the object containing those properties like enumerable, writable, and this kind of stuff. And the value of the decorator is actually the value of this property. So in our case, the value of the descriptor, sorry, is this function. So this is the name, this is the property key, and this is the value of this property. So hopefully you follow still. So let's do it like this. Prop key. So prop key is a string, and then we have this descriptor. And it was typed property descriptor, if I am not wrong. And there is the type of this property descriptor is the type of this value, and the value that we have is a sync function that returns a string. So it's like it returns promise, basically. It's promise of string, right? And this is cool because now we can just, instead of data, we can put prop key. And instead of this guy, we can put result of this function, which is const result equal to descriptor dot value, and just call this value, right? But of course, in more generic implementation, you would use apply, and you would apply the arguments of and so forth. But it's maybe. But I think it's cool enough that we can do it like that already. So the production implementation will be a little bit more complex, but not by much. And that's it. I mean, let's try to run it actually. How do you run it? Yeah, so I have this basic stuff. Okay, server started, and now if I refresh the page, I already did that. Oh, it doesn't work. Cool. Demo effect. Ah, well, because I don't have the internet, obviously. Sorry, I need to share my internet with this guy. So you had some internet for presenters, right? I forgot about it. But no, I'm sharing already, so no problem. Where is it only? Oh yeah, no problem. Here it is. Yeah, I think this guy also needs enlarging, although you cannot say enlarging nowadays. Yes, it means different thing. But okay, yeah. Zooming in, yeah. Now it kind of works, but it returns something else. Ah, yeah, because we forgot to await it suddenly. So we are just trying to return a promise there, obviously. So yeah, it rebuilds. The build step is actually pretty simple. We are running Typescript compiler. There's no webpack or this kind of stuff. So yeah, hello. Finally works. Third attempt only. You know, on that presentation, by the way, that I was talking about, it was like full of adventures. But when I lost my voice, I had 3 demos, and neither of them worked. Like totally zero. But I read somewhere that you need to make a backup of your demos beforehand, and I was just, okay, this demo has failed. Here's the backup. Well, I built it just at home, and it works. Yeah. So yeah, and that's it. That's our kind of backend. So we created a class, and it has the API, and it automatically registers. Now we can create more endpoints. Yeah, sure. Yeah, exactly. But frontend is still uses the magic string. But I was just going to ask, like, how cool is that? I mean, have anybody used decorators like for something custom in this room? Like not just decorators that are in there in Angular, but for something custom. Nobody? So I mean, this is really simple stuff, but nobody uses it. That's strange. Yeah?
Where you are, like, are you ever creating an instance of that controller? Where is it used?
I'm not creating instance because it is static method, as you can see. Well, it doesn't work yet, but we're gonna make it work. So here, what we want to do actually is to do something like this. AppController.data, right? Oh, sorry, data. Okay, let's see if that works. Imagine it would work. that would be really cool. Like you can just call server from front end without like actually calling the endpoint. Yeah. But no, it doesn't work because it says like server is not found. How can I zoom into this thing as well? Because I guess you don't see it. Yeah, so it says server is not found, obviously. So what happens here is there's app.mjs, and it has this app controller from server, and then it tries to get this server, and of course it fails. But what if we kind of created this server MJS file somehow, and just using a build plugin, we would create this file, and then it would kind of, under the hood, it would call our endpoint. So let's try to do it. And first, when you're creating something like that for the build plugins, it is cool idea to, I think, it's very cool idea to make it first like manually. So how it would work manually. So if I create server MJS, and instead of server, I will just use like server MJS in this file. This is a generated file. I'm just now hacking things around a little bit. And then we have the server MJS, Michael Jackson script. Easy to remember. And then we are exporting the class AppController. And it should have this same signature, basically, as our server-side class. So it should be static async data. And that's what we should generate with our build plugin. And then it should have something like const response equal to await fetch API data, right? So the same, and return await response.json. And if that would be there, then it works. Cool. So the only thing that is left is to generate this thing. Unfortunately, we don't have too much time, because I know that you guys want to drink beer more than listen to my session. But, so I will just do this ugly thing, which I never do. But today I just, yeah. So this is a file that I created at home. So it works for sure. So the idea is simple. I can show the difference, but it will be not easy to see here. But you can see what changed. Like there's a bunch of lines that was added, and so what we are doing is we are fetching this server.ts file that we have, and then we are traversing it with TypeScript, and we go through the abstract syntax tree of this file and find this method declarations that has the descriptor that is called API. And then we just generate some code based for those methods. And then we generate the code for the class as well. So it's pretty simple. I mean, for anybody who wrote at least one build plugin, something with Babel, it can be done with Babel as well. Doesn't matter. But I'm using here just TypeScript. So as you can see, there's like import TS from TypeScript. So TypeScript API. Yeah. So, and that's it. And then if we refresh the page, it again works. Let's do something more interesting. So we go return to the server and then try to rename this thing, like to something else, like from data to something else, And then we save. It rebuilds. And boom. And you see that it calls something else here. Like, can you? Okay, anyways. Yeah, so you can see, hopefully, on the last row. Yeah, so that's it. Pretty much, we did the thing. And then we can create more endpoints and notice that it was also replaced here, and the signature of the endpoint itself was changed to this something else. So you saw in the Chrome that it calls actually a different API, and this is very powerful. Whenever you need to split an endpoint, whenever you need to rename an endpoint, it's like no brainer. And if you have just the magic string, then anybody can use some kind of a logic like build API URL from something, and they do it all the time, and you never can find it in the project, like how to find all the places where endpoint works. Usually what they do is they go to the logs and see whenever it actually called, but then there could be some place that calls this endpoint once in a month, and then you never know, So, okay, so let's just return quickly and review one more time what happens there. So we have a app controller class. It has a decorator. This decorator creates the endpoint in Express. Then there is also this build.js, which is a kind of custom build step that I'm running in in the package JSON as part of the npm start flow, and then this guy creates the server.js for the client side, which is like, well, server MJS doesn't matter, and then up.tsx actually uses this proxy server instead of using the actual class on the server side, and this server is just a proxy that calls the endpoint. So I think it's pretty cool. There are many ideas that try to do similar stuff, but I think, like, well, there is, for example, protobuf and these kind of things, but the problem with them is that they are kind of build time, and this is like lifetime. So, I mean, it's in ID already, so you can just F2 or find all references, and it works. So yeah, and with this, I think we covered the missing link, and here's my Twitter handle, and thank you all for listening. Any questions?
Does the build plugin operate on the JavaScript AST or the TypeScript one?
On the TypeScript, yes.
So it should be technically possible to do it on the interface level instead of making proxy of the existing class, but to make a proxy of interface and the implementation of the class itself.
Sure. So, why not?
Yeah.
You can do anything.